Good afternoon, everyone. So, in this lecture, we're going to deal with the concept of budget constraints and budget lines. So, we know I've told you earlier that consumer choice has two major pillars: preferences and affordability. What consumer will ultimately buy depends upon what they prefer, given by their indifference curves and utility functions, something we will do later on, and what they can afford to buy. So what they want to buy and what they can afford to buy, this is given by their budget. In this lecture, we are going to focus on budget. So budget constraint should be understood. Before that, we are going to make certain assumptions. So let's say that consumer is consuming two goods, right? That is the first assumption. The second one is that price of good one is P1, price of good 2 is P2, and P1, P2 are greater than equal to 0, right? Because prices should not be negative. You can't buy a commodity whose price is -3. Consumer has a fixed money income M, which is given, which is again greater than 0. In this case, I have not put in the equality because zero money income doesn't make any sense, right? Zero price can happen, a good can be free, but zero money income means that consumer can't even buy anything. So affordability doesn't make sense. So that's why it's strictly greater than 0. In that case, budget constraint gives you the combinations, all combinations of two goods that consumer can afford given his income and prices, right? So constraint, I'm putting a constraint that consumer has a certain income and there are certain goods that he's consuming with prices P1 and P2. So you go to the markets, what combinations of those two goods that you can buy so that you're within your money income, that is, you're not spending more than your money income. Mathematically speaking, if P1 is the price of good one and X is the amount you spend on good one, X is the amount of good one you're buying. So this is the expenditure on X, right? Total money spent on good one, which is good X. For good Y or good 2, the price is P2 and good Y, amount of good Y you're buying is just Y. This gives you the expenditure on X, expenditure on Y rather. And if this expenditure is less than equal to your money income, that means you can afford the combination XY, right? You could buy, numerous combinations such like that, right? So this gives you your budget constraint. Graphically, for example, I have a budget constraint which looks like this. This says that you're buying X and Y with the prices 2 and 3 and your money income is 6. We all know how to plot an inequality. First of all, what we do is we find the intercept points, right? We need two intercept points, that will be enough. So if X is 0, Y will be 6 by 3 is equal to 2, right? If Y is 0, then X will be 2X is equal to 6, X is equal to 3. So when you're plotting an inequality, for the time being, we assume it to be an equality, right? This is how you plot an inequality, right? For time being, I am assuming 2x plus 3y is equal to 6. Now I've got the 2 points that I need, right? So I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have y on the y-axis, x on the x-axis. right? The 2 points that I've got here are 0, 2 and 3, 0. And I'm going to join these 2 points. This will give me my line 2x plus 3y is equal to 6. Now note that there is an greater than equal to sign involved here, right? That's why I've drawn a full line. If it were like 2x plus 3y strictly less than 6, you would have drawn a budget constraint like this, right? But generally in microeconomics, you don't deal with these type of inequalities, right? Generally, we have these type of inequalities when you're talking about budget constraints. Now, how do you shade an inequality? We have done that in class 11th mathematics. If not, I'll just remind you. So you take the inequality 2x plus 3y less than equal to 6. So for the plotting purposes, we assumed it to be an equality, but now we are back to square one where it was an inequality. So you plot it like that. You assume there is a point 0, 0, which is just origin. You put it in the equation. You get 0 plus 0 less than equal to 6. That is 0 less than equal to 6. Right? If 0 is less than equal to 6 is true, that means you shade towards the origin. Right? True implies towards 0, 0. If it is false, you shade away from 0, 0. That means that 0 is less than 6. That is true, right? You don't need to worry about it too much. That is true. So you shade towards the origin. We know that x and y are greater than equal to 0. So we have got this region as a budget constraint, right? I'm elaborating here because generally you don't really understand how do you even plot where this is shading coming from. This is from your class 11th logic of inequalities, right? But more generally speaking, a budget constraint P1x plus P2y less than equal to M for P1, P2 greater than equal to 0, M greater than equal to 1. This is your generally given as your budget constraint, and it is plotted like this, right? So this is a general form of budget constraints. All these points inside this shading is the combination that consumer can afford given his money income and prices, right? So this is what about what we knew about budget constraints. But we know one thing about consumer is that he's rational. He is rational. So when he is rational, what it means that he wants to maximize his satisfaction. So suppose you have a budget of 50 rupees for say chocolates that you're going to the market with. And one chocolate costs 10, the other chocolate costs say 5, and you're buying one of each, you're just spending rupees 15, right? But you had a budget of 50. So that means you're not a very smart consumer. If you were given 50 purely for chocolates, why would you spend 15? Right? That's the logic of rationality. Consumer should make a very smart choice given the money, income, and prices, not without money, income, and prices. So that's where the concept of budget line comes into it. It's just an extension of budget constraint. So budget line tells you the combinations. This is your budget line. It tells you the combinations of two goods. Remember, we are dealing with a two-dimensional space here. I've assumed we are consuming just two goods. Combination of two goods that allow consumer to fully spend his money income. right? So it's just a little technicality, that's all. So we assume 2x plus 3y less than equal to 6 was your budget constraint, wherein all the combinations, if the money income was less than 6, was the one were the ones that consumer was able to afford. But for now, I'm saying that 2x plus 3y is exactly equal to 6. That is, the consumer will buy only those combinations which amount to rupees 6. That's the only difference, right? I'm not bothered about any point inside it. I'm only bothered about points on this line. So this is your budget line, right? Such that expenditure equals money income, right? If you have this much money, why save it, right? If you could, if you had this money income purely for chocolates, why would you save it, right? That's the logic that we are giving here. Again, the only difference is of the inequality. Budget constraint is given by P1x plus P2y less than equal to M, and budget line is given by P1x plus P2y equal to M. Expenditure exactly equals money income. When we are dealing with consumer maximization problem, mathematically speaking, equality makes more sense than inequality. That is why we are also concerned with equality. But technically and logically speaking as well, it is important that consumer spends their entire money income. So this is what budget line and budget constraints are. But as we keep dealing with this in economics, we're always thinking at the margin. We're thinking at the change, the rate of change, right? What is the rate of change, or what is the slope of budget line? Any budget line BL is a function of two variables here, X and Y. So the slope of budget line dy by dx is given by their respective prices. P1 minus 2 accompanied by a negative sign. Right. So how does it come, this formula? I'm going to tell you now. But generally, if consumer is consuming two goods, then the slope of the budget line, that is the rate of change in the market, is given by P1 upon P2 accompanied by a negative sign. Right. Why negative? Because budget line is downward sloping. Right? It is downward sloping. Uh, Generally, straight lines have negative slope if they are downward sloping. But economic logic is also accompanied here. If you had 2x plus 3y is equal to 6, and I had initially been consuming, say I was consuming, yeah, I was consuming 3 units of X and 0 units of Y, right? This is what I was consuming. But if I want to increase, suppose Y, I cannot increase it while keeping X same or increasing X at the same time. For example, if I want to consume 1 unit of Y now, let's find out what will X be, right? So 2X is equal to 3, X is equal to 1.5. As you could see now, if I'm increasing the amount of Y I'm consuming, I have to reduce the amount of X because consumers' money income is limited. I'm not increasing consumers' money income. That is the reason why X has to fall if I have to increase Y, or Y has to fall if I want to increase X. That is why any line is downward sloping if those two commodities cannot increase together at the same time. So if I'm here originally, y increasing means X falling, right? and this amounts to a downward sloping budget line. And that is why the slope, which tells you where is it sloping. It's sloping up, it's sloping down, it's sloping straight up or down, is accompanied by a negative sign. So that's the logic. Because consumers' money income is limited, consumption of both goods can't rise simultaneously, right? It cannot rise simultaneously. Consumption of one good can rise only if the other good's consumption falls. Now, let's find out the slope mathematically. Right. So when you want to find a slope of a two variable function like that, what you do is you totally differentiate, right? Differentiate. So first of all, we know P1, P2, and M are constants. They will not change. They're given by the market. Your income is same, your consumption, sorry, your prices are same. Only what is changing is X and Y. And we know that the slope is given by dy by dx. This is what we know. So you're going to totally differentiate. What I mean by totally differentiation is you just differentiate x totally, which is dx, without any respect, not in respect with y or anything or m or p1, just totally differentiate. This is this. And derivative of a constant is 0. That is what we know, right? P1 was constant, so P1 came right away like that, and totally differentiated x becomes dx, totally differentiated y becomes dy, and P2 comes as it is because it was a constant. And m is a constant, so its derivative is 0. Now I want to find the formula for a slope, which is dy by dx. So I'll take P2 on the other end. This becomes simple algebra now. P1 by P2 negative is dy by dx. Very simple formula for slope of budget line. Right. Now, what is the technical meaning of slope? Right, this is the mathematical stuff. I've already dealt with it. I've told you why it's downward sloping, mathematically downward sloping because it's accompanied by a negative sign. Economically speaking, because consumer has limited money income. But what does a slope tell us as far as budget line is concerned? Slope gives you the market rate of sacrifice. As I've just told you, it's downward sloping because consumer has to give up 1 unit of or how many units of one good that we don't know. Consumer has to give up some units of one good in order to obtain more of the other good because his money income is limited. But at what rate? How many units per good need to be sacrificed? That is given by the market rate of sacrifice or the slope of the budget line. So it gives you the rate at which consumer, at which market allows consumer to substitute one good for the other. Right. So remember one thing here that you're dealing with affordability here, not with preferences. So consumer can't just sacrifice at whichever rate that they want because they are given certain prices by the market. Only market can tell how many goods of X, how many units of X that consumer needs to sacrifice in order to obtain one more unit of Y. Right. So P1 by P2 equal to 3 by 1 tells you that for every additional unit of good Y, for every additional unit of good X, sorry, consumer needs to sacrifice 3 units of Y. This is according to the market. And market is giving this rate based on the prices. That's simple, right? Market has only one information, which is the prices. So this is the market rate of sacrifice. So this is the concept of budget line. Now, let's look at the comparative statistics of budget line. So in economics, microeconomics, throughout, we always deal with comparative statistics. It allows us to see how will the model change, how will the outcomes of the model change when the exogenous variables change. Right. So what are exogenous, endogenous variables? Endogenous are the ones which are what we are determining, which are our key variables. Exogenous are the ones that is given to us externally. So we were determining X and Y and P1, P2, M. They were exogenous. They were given to us, right? We were not concerned about them. We were only concerned about how much to consume of X and Y. These were the variables we were determining. But comparative statistics allows us to see if by any chance any of these P1, P2 or M changes, then what happens to the end result, right? Now suppose you have P1X, P2Y is equal to M. Now for some reason, the price of good X is changing by T, price of good Y is also changing by T, and your money income is also changing by T. For example, right, if price of good one was say 10 and price of good two was 20, your money income was 30. And I'm saying price of good X has become 20, it has become 30, and it has become 40. All of them have changed by a proportion which is 10. Then what happens to your new budget line? So let's see. So new price has become TP1X, TP2Y, and this is TM. Now T will be common from this end, and T is this, right? T will get cancelled, and P1X plus P2Y will be equal to R. So the budget line is unchanged. This phenomena is called money illusion. Illusion is something that you think is correct, but it's not correct, right? You think that prices of both goods have increased, so you will be consuming less of it. But all of a sudden you realize that the budget line is exactly the same because your money income was also increased, right? So this is an illusion that market gives you. In this case, if both P1, P2 and M change in the same proportion, your your budget line remains unchanged, right? So no changes here. Now let's consider the second case. P1x1, P1x plus P2y is equal to M. Now just your money income is changing, right? Your money income is changing. It's increasing, for example. Let's say 10x plus 20y is equal to 100. This was your initial income. And all of a sudden, your new income has become 200. Okay, let's plot these two lines. You'll understand automatically. I've told you how to plot a line. You draw a graph like this. First case, you take when x is equal to 0, what will be y? When y is equal to 0, what will be x? So when x is 0, y is 50, y is 5, when x is 0. And when y is 0, x is 10, right? X is 10. You get this budget line. Well, I'll make it in the same graph so it's easier to understand. Now for the second budget line, x is 0, then y is 10. When y is 0, x is 20, right? So you have 0, 10 and 20. As you could see, all of a sudden, the budget line has shifted parallelly to the right. Shifted parallelly to the right when M has increased. So when M will increase, given that the prices are remaining unchanged at 10 and 20, the budget line will shift parallelly to the right. Similarly, if the prices remain changed and your income has decreased, the budget line will shift towards left. When I mean parallel shift, what does it mean mathematically? It means that the line is shifting, but the slope is remaining unchanged. And why is the slope unchanged? The slope of the budget line is P1 by P2. It is unchanged because the prices are unchanged. That means a parallel shift in the straight line. Right? Parallel means the slope will be, if it is like this initially, the new line will also have a exactly same slope. It cannot be the case that the original line was like this and the new line was like this. No, that means the slope is changing. This is wrong. Only this is correct because the prices are unchanged. Next case is if suppose price of X has changed, right? Price of X has changed. What happens? If price of X has changed, this was the original budget line. This was the original budget line. And the new budget line will ensure that you can buy the same amount of Y, but less amount of X, like this. Right? You can only buy this much now. Because price of X has risen, so you can buy less of it according to the law of demand, right? That is what it tells you. You will buy more of a good if its price is falling, you will buy less of a good if its price is increasing. Similarly, if this was your original budget line and price of X has actually fallen, so you'll buy same amount of Y, but more of X. So all of a sudden you'll consume more of X because its price has fallen, right? You can do the same exercise with good Y prices. If this was the original budget line and you were saying price of good Y has actually fallen, so you'll buy the same amount of X, but more of Y. You'll buy the same amount of X, more of Y. And if you had, this was price of X falling, rising, this was price of X falling, this is price of Y falling, and this is price of Y rising. So price of Y rising means that you will buy same of X, but lesser of Y, right? You will buy only this much. So this is what we call a rotation or a tilting of budget line. Tilting of budget line when one of the prices changes and M remains constant, right? If price of X has risen, the budget line has rotated inwards along the X-axis. When the price of Y has increased, the budget line has rotated inward along the Y-axis. When price of X has fallen, the budget line has tilted outwards along the X-axis. When the price of Y has fallen, the budget line has tilted inwards, has tilted outwards along the y-axis. So this is what we have in the tilting of budget lines. we can have a situation where both the prices are changing, right? This can give you multiple scenarios, right? We can have the original budget line like this, but the slope will all over, changing in this case. So we don't know what the shape will be like. It could be like this, it could be like this, it could be like this, whatever. If both prices are changing, the budget line will completely change. But generally, this is how we deal with budget. We also have the theory of preferences. Combining budget and preferences will give you your ultimate consumer choice. So what we did was we started with the concept of budget constraint, right? We started with a combination of two goods that consumer can afford given his income and prices. All those two goods and their combinations are given by a graph like this, where all these combinations inside the line are your budget constraint that the consumer can afford. But if consumer wants to spend all of his income on the two goods, that gives you your budget line combination of the two goods such that consumer expenditure exactly equals to his money income, which is just this line and not the shading inside. The slope of this budget line is given as minus of P1 by P2, which is the market rate of sacrifice, the rate at which the market asks consumer to sacrifice one good for the other. It is accompanied by a negative sign because budget line is downward sloping. You cannot increase the consumption of two goods at the same time. You have to consume more of one good in lieu of lesser of the other. Yeah. Right? In case consumer is witnessing a scenario where the prices of both goods are changing by the same amount and your income is also changing by the same amount T, then the budget line remains unchanged, and this phenomenon is known as money illusion. And if prices of one of the goods is changing while the money income remains constant, that gives you your rotation of the budget line. And finally, if there is a change in the money income with no change in the prices, that leads to a shift in the budget. Right? So that is the concept of budget. I hope it's clear. Thank you.